Hello, and welcome to the Spiritual Solopreneur series. Here is where we talk about all things spiritual, business, how the two mesh together, and anything else that comes up. Today, my guest is Sunayana Clark. Sunayana is a well-being coach and consultant. She has a background in holistic therapy and has been a Reiki Master Teacher for 23 years. Today, she helps women become empowered through their connection with their higher self. Welcome, Sunyana.
Thank you very much for having me, Bev.
It's great to have you. Sunyana, why is it important for us to be connected to our higher self, especially for women?
So it's quite a long answer, but I'll try and not go on too long. So here's the thing. In society, we see generally women often feel disempowered or unheard. Their opinions go unheard. They feel disempowered, in their choices that they have available to them. In America, we're seeing what's going on with abortion laws, for example, women feeling very disempowered. In the UK, we have women feeling unheard and discriminated against in a much more subtle way. It's more to do with how we dress and things like that. So the first thing is that when you connect to your higher self, that feeling of I'm not important or I'm not worthy begins to disappear. So that's the first reason I would say that it's important. The second reason I would say it's important is because you're not here by chance. Your physical presence is on this planet with purpose. And when you connect to your higher self, that feeling of a lot of people have a feeling of being alone or feeling lost, that disappears very rapidly because your higher self is like your most unconditional, most loving, most supportive person you could have. You just can't see them, right? So they're like a invisible BFF, but so much more, right?
Mm.
And that's why it's important, because for women, I firmly believe, and this is something my higher self, Athalia, and I really are working towards, is I firmly believe that when women are empowered, they become the most beneficial catalysts for change within their communities. And we can create change at ground level as well as national or international. But within our own immediate communities, we can create the most amazing change. And that extends to how we raise our families, to how we interact with people, how we do business, how we teach. Every single aspect of our lives can be affected. And when you have an empowered woman doing it, it is off the scale miraculous in its effects. So, yeah.
Exactly. We have the power. We just need the impetus to use it.
Yeah, and the confidence, yeah, and the belief.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So you mentioned your higher self, Athalia.
yeah.
How did you first become acquainted with her? What did she say or what did she show you?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So many people are actually unconsciously connected to their higher selves. And that was the case for me through my Reiki practice and my healing work. What would happen is in sessions, and this went on for almost 20 years. I just didn't know it was her. But for about 20 years, I'd be working with people. My specialism initially was cancer. Then I went into areas like motor neurone disease, and then latterly sort of fertility and anxiety. And it was trauma-based anxiety. And what would happen is in a session, I would just come out with a comment, and the person would, their jaw would drop and go, "How do you know that?" And I'd be like, "Well, I just know that." And it's just that's my, and I'd call it intuition. So this had been going on for 20 years, and I got a bit of a reputation for kind of knowing stuff about people that they didn't know how I knew about it. And so some people would say, go and see Sunyana. She's a bit weird and witchy, but she knows stuff. So this is how I worked with Athalia for 20 years, and really loved that way of working because I felt very empowered during my sessions. It meant I could make real change for people, facilitate that change, and they'd go away feeling happier, healthier, whatever it was. About 4 years ago, I connected consciously with Athalia. And for me, that looked like that. I'm going to just digress slightly. 12 years ago, my dad died. And after he died, I felt very alone. I felt like I didn't have anyone who really got me in the same way as my dad did. When I met Athalia 4 years ago, consciously, in other words, by consciously, I mean I talked to her in my head.
Okay.
That feeling of being alone really disappeared for me. And it showed up in some really lovely ways. So the first way was she gave me a song, and she would play me a song. It's called Symphony by Clean Bandit. You can get it on Spotify. She would play me that song whenever I got in the car. And if you listen to the lyrics, it's about someone feeling alone and then wanting to join their symphony and being together. And so the first time I heard this song, and I'd heard this song before, it wasn't new, but it's like the lyrics really stood out to me. So that was the first way she began connecting with me. Then she began connecting with me um a little bit through work, and we were going, this was sort of about a year or so before the pandemic began to creep in. I get my years mixed up, so it must have been 2019 that I met Athalia. 2020 we went into the pandemic, I think.
Yeah.
And in that year, she sort of helped me with songs, with signs. I'd get some really interesting dreams where it felt like I was having a really long conversation, and then I'd remember salient parts of it during the day. She began to help me. She's my GPS on local
Oh,
drives even today. So, and it's really funny. Sometimes I'm like, I'm not listening to you. I just want to go that way. It's the most direct way. And inevitably, I'd get stuck in traffic. It was, and there was a lot of humor in this relationship as well, because then you start laughing at yourself. You're like, okay, I really do need to listen to you sometimes, don't I? And so that was the other thing that really came through, was the humor from her. And with regard to kind of that alone feeling, that grief I still felt around my dad's demise, she brought a lot of comfort and love to me in a way that I didn't even realize I needed. But in that comfort and that love, it allowed me to let go of some of my grief as well. So yeah, it's been a phenomenal relationship, and it continues to evolve. As I change, she changes. As she changes, I change. So we're always learning together.
wow. Are
Yeah.
you clairaudient, do you
So
think?
I'm more claircognizant, so I know stuff very easily. But over the years, because I've obviously been exercising my intuition for many, many years as a therapist, I have become clairaudient, and I'm beginning to see, so I'm beginning to become clairvoyant as well. Um, but my main skill is cognizance, is knowing, right? It just kind of pops in my head, and I'm like, is this the problem? Is this what you feel like? And it's
Yes.
so pinpoint accurate sometimes that people burst into tears, and I laughingly say to people now, yeah, that's my other skill. I'm very good at making you cry. And they're like, oh, okay. I was like, but it's a good thing, because it's clearly what you needed, is to let
It's
something. So yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So is it easier for some people to generate this connection than others? For example, if you have a heightened sense of intuition, and it's something that you, I think, focused on over the years, and maybe that made it easier for your higher self to connect with you.
Yeah, I think the main thing about wanting to connect to your higher self has to be your desire to do it. It's as simple as that. Now, if you already practice using your intuition in any capacity, people have their intuitions talking to them all the time, with the gut feeling, a premonition. Sometimes a bit of deja vu can be intuition related. It happens to most of us at some point. But if you have practiced your intuition, then you might find it easy to trust the receiving. But literally anyone can receive. And the simplest way is literally take a couple of deep breaths, close your eyes, and say to your higher self, hi, I'd like to connect, please. It's as simple as that.
Wow.
And then the hard part is, because as humans, we like to see visual evidence. We want proof, right? The hard part is actually saying, okay, I'm just going to trust that that feeling I got is my higher self, or that sensation I was. Some people get a stroke. When I first met Athalia, she would stroke my cheek.
Oh, wow.
Some people get a shiver. A friend of mine used to get an itchy armpit whenever she connected to her higher self. They have very humorous ways of connecting with you, but it's learning to trust that. And you say, okay, if this is you, give me that feeling again. And that's where a bit of persistence has to come in and the trust has to come in. You just have to kind of go, all right, I'm going to hold my disbelief, suspend it a little bit and practice and see what happens.
Awesome. Because I
Yeah.
think people have a trouble to discern what's a message sometimes and what's just a product of cause and effect.
Hmm.
I went to the store the other day and bought stuff, and the bill came to $44.44. And I thought that was a little unusual, but, you know, is it a message, or did I just buy $44.44 worth of stuff?
Yeah. I think you have to kind of, so one of the things I think when you're working with energy or intuition is become aware of your thoughts. What were you thinking about around the time when you were purchasing your stuff? What was the thing? Because often the numbers, and a lot of people initially see numbers from their higher selves, those numbers are often confirmations of you're on the right track, or you are correct, this thing is changing or ending, or um keep going, you need to think about this a bit more, you need to, but it depends on what you were thinking about when you were doing your shopping. Okay, because I agree, getting
Interesting.
44.44 as your bill is unusual, right?
Yeah, yeah. And of course, I don't remember what I was thinking, but I will try to remember that to remember
Yeah.
what I was
No,
thinking.
my suggestion always is connect to your higher self and say, flow it back to me. Let me know what I was thinking about when I was shopping and you sent me that sign, because I can't remember. I'm in the process of writing a
Right.
book at the moment, and I got the name of a chapter and it's gone out of my head. And I'm like, I need the name back, please. Give me the name back. And it'll come back at the right time.
Oh,
But it's quite handy having a higher self, because sometimes you're like, okay, I don't understand what's going on in front of me with my vision as a human, but I'm going to let you understand it. And then you're going to tell me and explain to me, show me what I need to understand about a situation.
hmm,
Right. So an example would be supposing you walk into a room and there's some people having a disagreement. And you're like, I don't really understand what they're disagreeing about, because it seems like they're actually talking very similarly, but they're not communicating very well. And then they try and draw you into that argument. And you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to get involved with this. This is not really anything to do with me. But somehow you find yourself pulled in. You can then kind of go away and say to your higher self, what was that about? What was it that I needed to understand? How did I get pulled into this argument? And what can I learn from this so I don't get pulled into that kind of thing again? I don't like it. It doesn't make me feel good. This is the beauty of your higher self, is it's a very practical relationship. It's not about sitting in a yoga pose and meditating for hours. You can do that if you wish, but it's actually saying to your higher self, let's get practical together. Let's do stuff together. Let's understand stuff. Let's change behaviors that don't serve us anymore and have more fun and feel good about this life. That's what it's really about with your higher self.
that brings me to another question about, I believe that your higher self has said on your website, or you said on your website anyway, we're here to experience a life of abundance and have
Mhm,
success and happiness. So
mhm.
my question is, where does the learning of the lessons come in? Because that generally is associated with a certain amount of pain and discomfort,
Right.
which to my brain is different than abundance, success, and happiness.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do those things go together?
Okay. So here's the thing. Before you came to the planet Earth and you were in non-physical, some people will call that heaven. a term, it depends what you like to call it. In that place, you knew only love and you knew only abundance of everything. When we came to planet Earth, however, we experienced things that made us feel like there was a shortage of love, a shortage of friendship, a shortage of money, maybe, shortage of goods. You know, if you think about how people behaved during the pandemic, in the UK, it was about toilet roll.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and there was a huge shortage of it. You know, there wasn't really. And, you know, so shortage of food, shortage of time. We're taught those things. We experience things that make us feel unworthy, unloved, maybe despised or disgusted with something we're seeing. All of those experiences are stored in your subconscious mind. What your higher self can do is they can help you revisit those memories. You don't re-experience them, you just revisit them, and you get to see them from a new perspective, which is, maybe I didn't have all the information at that time. And if I look at it now from an adult perspective, I can see as a child when that adult was yelling at me, they weren't yelling at me because I was really bad. They were yelling at me because they were terrified that something would happen to me. But as a child, we interpreted that as I am bad. And that's what got stored in our head. Now, the problem with those subconscious beliefs is that they affect behaviors. So they're the things, you know, some people, if you watch some programs where you've got the rebel kid who's like, well, if they're going to label me bad, I'm going to be bad, right?
Right.
It's that kind of playing out of those beliefs. No one's bad. No one's inherently bad. It's just you have beliefs that make you think I'm not good at friendship, I don't have good boundaries, or I'm a bad person, or I'm unworthy of good love, healthy love, or I'm unworthy of having lots of money and keeping that money. Because a lot of, a lot of lottery winners, for example, I read a statistic, it's something like 70% of lottery winners lose all the money they win, like they burn through it.
Yeah.
So there, I would say there's an issue around beliefs around worthiness of having money and being well off when lots of people aren't, right? So with your higher self's help, you go back, you get to review those memories, let go of those and replace it with a new truth. Something like, the truth is, I am lovable. The truth is, I'm worthy. The truth is, it's safe for my voice to be heard. The truth is, God loves me, right? For many people, that can be quite a triggering thought, but the truth is, God does love you.
Mhm.
So that's how you move from this place of fear and lack, and you come over to love and abundance and prosperity. And in all their forms, I'm not just talking about love as in man, woman, or
Right.
straight, gay. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about love as in love of nature, love of animals, love for humanity, like in a broader scale I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question? I think it does.
I
Yeah.
think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that sounds like that's the lesson. That's the learning of the lessons. It's an
Mhm.
evolution
Yeah.
from not understanding what's going on to understanding what's going on, and that's probably preconceived, as it were, before birth, pre-exist.
Um, Not always. So in your soul contract, for example, you might have specific events that are predetermined and pre-manifested, right? So they might be, for example, meeting significant people in your life. That might be a predetermination you've put into your soul contract that when you come to earth, these are the people you're going to meet. So this can be with a spouse, it can be with siblings or parents. You also have something in your soul contract called what if events. So these are events where they're a bit like the sliding door analogy. It's like, what if then? So if I, for example, the way we got introduced, if I hadn't responded to that initial inquiry, then this would not have happened. So this might have been a what if situation where in non-physical, your soul and my soul and our higher self said, it would be really good if you had a conversation when you're on planet Earth at some point, right? But we both have free will. So you might have said in non-physical, yeah, I'd really like that. But when you came here, gone, I don't want to do a podcast. It's too much work, right? That's why it's a what if. It's not predetermined because we have free will, and you have to have chosen to do a podcast, and I have to choose to be on the podcast. So you have these things that are in your soul contract, and of course you have free will. Your soul contract may contain many things, but as the physical human, you have the free will to decide whether you will do something or not. You are not obliged to do anything. And that's why your higher self can't interfere in your life. It's why, unless you consciously connect with them, they can't nudge you, because you have free will. This is your life. You are the human being living your life.
Mhm.
So I agree that some things can be predetermined, but not all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'd like to get a sense of the workings, the mechanics of this. So we've got inner voice and higher self. That's
Yeah.
essentially the same thing, correct?
Mhm.
So then where does soul and guides and angels come in
Okay.
to that mix?
So your soul energy is unique to you. When so this is, as I understand it, this is how the process is of how your soul is created. Your higher self goes to God and says to God, I would like a new soul, please. And I'd like a soul for these purposes. Now, this is not a quick conversation. It may go on for hundreds or eons of years until God feels and your higher self feels that they've reached an accord and they understand the purpose of that soul, what that soul will receive, and understand how that'll add to the collective knowledge of all of us, whether that soul is going to come to earth or not. All of those things. So your soul energy is, if you like, the most distinctly you version of you. It is the most original, unique version of you. Your higher self is the non-physical aspect of you. So some people call it inner voice. And your higher self is with you through your entire lifetime, just like your soul is, right? Your soul resides within your physical body, going from your pineal gland right the way down to your base of your perineum. So right the way through the body. And your higher self exists outside of you. They don't exist in you, they're outside of you. Your angels and guides they can be humans who've had a life and now are non-physical who want to help you. So they can be relatives. So for example, my dad is on my team.
Mm.
They can be famous people as well. They're called notorious guides. So when I first began sort of delving into this work, I found out that I had some really interesting women as guides for me that were helping me with work. So I had Florence Nightingale, I had Emily Pankhurst, who's a suffragette, and then I had a couple more suffragettes as well. And it was really interesting to me because I am still quite obsessed about women voting. I find it really upsetting when I hear women haven't used their vote.
Right.
And but when you look at even Florence, I was like, why have I got Florence Nightingale? That's interesting because I only know her from a nursing point of view. But actually, in her own way, she was a real change maker within society at that time, because not only did she revolutionize nursing, but she actually revolutionized a lot of social care within society at that time. And she was a woman who was hard to say no to. She was very, very determined. And so you can kind of see, I was like, oh, okay, I can see these aspects, how their guidance has impacted my work and how I've come to this thing of, as a holistic therapist, I was never very good just giving a pampering session. I was always interested in creating a solution and a change. It's like, oh, that makes sense. right? Then you might have a friend of mine, Steve Jobs is her guide, and she's really into technology and creating technology.
Wow.
So you have notorious guides, you have familial or ancestral guides. You can also have guides who are what we would consider as angels. So Archangel Michael is a really common guide for a lot of people to have. Some people have the Virgin Mary and Mother Mary as their guides, and they will bring their aspects. So if you look at the Mother Mary, or I know someone had Lord Ganesha from Hinduism as one of her guides, they bring such beauty in their work to you. They bring immense love, for example. So these people who would have those kind of guides, they might have immense love to share with other people, but may not be very good at sharing it to themselves. So that will be part of the lesson they're here to learn, is that you're worthy of the love that you're sharing out. They'll have, sometimes they'll have the most exquisite tenderness and compassion towards animals or people or a section of society that are normally considered pariahs, for example. So your guides work in different ways. And the other interesting thing is you don't always have the same guides through your life. You'll have some guides who are with you continuously. For example, your guardian angel and your higher self will be with you throughout your life. But you may have guides that come and then go because you've grown and you don't need them anymore, and someone else will come in to take their place. And that's the thing I think a lot of us don't realize, and didn't realize. I didn't realize until I really began to read up about it, is our teams are fluid and they'll help other people. So I've got a guide who, her name is Angelica. She helps me with something very specific. She happens to also be a very important guide for a friend of mine. And when we were talking and discovered this, we discovered one of my guides, who I thought was mine only, is actually on her team as well. So they're very fluid in their interactions. They work together. They all know each other. It's a really, the thing I really understood was how collaborative and cooperative they all are. And in that, they create this amazing beauty and wonderful non-physical space for our souls.
And what's the best way to find out who these people are and their names? And I would think, if I'm sitting here now, if I knew who these people were, I would have a much better idea of where I'm supposed to be going.
So you might have, some people have teams, for example, for work. So I'm self-employed, so I'll have a self-employment team.
Hmm.
I also have a money team, so around currency generation. I also have a team for creativity as well. I wouldn't naturally call myself creative, but in the last few years, I've noticed there's a streak coming through that I'm like, oh, did not know that existed at all. But here it comes, right? So I'm like, I've designed t-shirts, and I'm writing a book, and I'm starting an art class in a couple of weeks. Like, there's definitely been a push from this team. So the way you get to know them is you ask your higher self to introduce them to you, right? So you do your connection. And for your listeners, I offer a free higher self connection practice that they can listen to. And I can send you the link for that. They literally do the connection. Once they're confident in their connection with their higher self, they say, right, I'd like you to start introducing me to my immediate team. Who helps me on a daily basis, please? Right. And then you start to notice things. So you might notice, for example, I'm just asking Athalia who we can use for you. Who's on your daily team? Okay, so you have a female guide who's called, I think, Mary or Maria. I'm not quite sure of the name. Okay. And she is with you. She's got a tremendous sense of humor, right? And my sense is that she gives you jokes to tell people.
That's
That's what it
possible.
is. That's what it feels like to me. Like she laughs a lot and she likes you laughing a lot, so she gives you jokes. So if, for example, you wanted to connect to Mary properly, you would say to Mary, okay, now that we know you exist, I want you to show up for me. And you have to start noticing, you have to start paying attention. So it might be you start hearing her name everywhere, right? Or you start seeing jokes with her name in it, or you start hearing jokes and you're like, that's hilarious. That's something I would have said. Oh, hang on. Is that you? And then you start getting confirmation as well from her, just kind of going, yep, that was me. Right. And you can
Oh,
ask her, what is your signal for a yes? What is your signal for a no? So for example, with Athalia, her signal for a yes often, if I'm not understanding clearly, is I get the tingles. If it's, or I get my around my belly button, it kind of goes all tingly.
mhm.
If I'm getting a no, it's like dead still. Nothing's happening. I can't
Mm.
feel anything. It's like I've gone numb right from the neck down. So ask as well, what are your yes and no signs? Because every guide will have something slightly different. They're an imaginative bunch, honestly. They really are. And they're hanging out to help you. So the more you interact with them, the more they want to interact with you.
That is awesome. Mary, okay, I'm
Yeah.
I'm surprised about that. Okay, I was expecting another name, but that's that's very cool. And yes, I do like to laugh and tell jokes. So thank you. Thank you for the jokes. I
Yeah, there you go.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Um, like so, and this is the beauty of it. Once you open the door to them, they'll all stop. It's like they often present to me like a line. I'm next. I'm next. I want to talk. My turn, and it's like there's plenty of time. Don't rush. Let's just
Yeah.
do one thing at a time, right? So just be aware. When after my dad passed, my dad's name was Samar, and it's not a very common name. And I was watching actually a program called NCIS, which is an American detective program.
Mhm.
And there was a suspect called Samar.
Oh.
And at the time, I'd been really missing him. And at one point, they just kept yelling his name. And I was like, I actually turned the telly off because it felt quite hard to listen to. But I was like, okay, I get it. You're with me. I get it. You're right.
Aw.
And it was really interesting how that came across because it's not a name that you hear in everyday kind of on telly, not on American TV, certainly, and not on English TV. So, yeah. So look out for the signs.
Okay, okay. My dog passed away last year. Her name was Mia, and we've
Mm.
been missing her every day since then. My next door neighbor just had a baby and they named her Mia. And I was like, oh, it's so nice to have another Mia on the block, like it just filled that tiny piece
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
void.
But that's also a sign that she's still with you because
Mhm.
when I'm recording this with you and my cat is literally behind my laptop, fast asleep actually.
Yeah,
But our animals never lose their connection to us. They're always with us, even in non-physical. When it's our turn to transition back to non-physical, your animals will be there waiting to greet you.
yeah,
So that connection's never gone.
that is awesome. This whole all sounds like a wonderful way to silence the negative voice in our heads that we often
Mhm.
get, especially business people, especially solopreneurs, I think, because they're kind of off on their own. Um, but it does surface at times, telling us that we're not good enough and we're frauds and this and that. Is the key just asking for assistance?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I would always say is ask for assistance, but it's also about understanding what has triggered your thought that I'm not good enough or I can't make a success of this or um why is it working for them and not for me? What is the belief that's running that thought? Because you can ask simply help me, but if you said help me, but also help me clear any beliefs that don't serve me and stop me succeeding, far more effective, right?
Right.
Because once you've cleared them, they're gone. You don't need to keep revisiting them. Now, I'm not saying just because you've cleared a few beliefs, your success is assured. But what I'm saying is you're making it a much easier playing field for yourself. And then you can say to your higher self, right, we've cleared these beliefs. Now, what's the next step? And you only want the next step. Don't worry about your end goal. Like if say on this podcast, your end goal was to get to 1 million listeners, right? For this brilliant podcast, you don't want to focus on 1 million. What you want to focus on maybe is saying to your higher self, bring me the best guests that will really serve my audience, really light them up, and make them feel like, whoa, this was the most epic listen I've had in ages. I need to tell my friends about this, right? And if you let them, your higher self will guide you to the right people. So one of the ways my team guide me, for example, is if I have two names of people I'm thinking of, I want to do a collaboration with, I can look at their pictures or their names, and it looks like one is standing out slightly more than the other. And that's how I know who to work with. That's
Hmm.
one of the ways I know, right?
Okay.
Um, but if I didn't have pictures, I could say to my team, okay, show me who should I work with? And they keep turning up in my social media, or they keep their name keeps coming up, like 3 people or 4 people will mention their name to me in passing, and I'll be like, okay, I hear you. That's who I need to go and have a conversation with, right? So that's what I mean about following the next nudge. Don't worry about the end goal. They know what your end goal is. You just want to go nudge by nudge by nudge. What do I need to learn? Where do I need to do
Hmm.
next? They can help you with that.
So
And the other
don't be
sorry.
in a rush either.
Yeah, don't be in a rush. And it will move quite fast. If you follow those nudges, it can move quite fast. But don't be impatient. Like, enjoy this process. Feel the satisfaction of, okay, I took the advice and I've got this list of amazing guests coming up. Really luxuriate in that pleasure of, whoa, this feels really exciting and good to me, right?
Yeah.
Because when you do that, you're beginning to see the world in a different way. You're beginning to see the world as a wonderful place filled with brilliant people for you to talk to and have the most amazing conversations with. And then you're that spills into, I feel really abundant because I have these rich, layered conversations with people. And that spills into, whoa, nature's so abundant. Look at animals, look at trees, and gradually what happens is you're gradually changing your perspective from I feel hard done by, life feels hard, life feels poor, to actually life is wonderful and abundant and rich. And you haven't even noticed it's happening because all you've been thinking about is how do I get brilliant guests onto my podcast? Right? It's really simple steps like that that make a huge difference.
Awesome. It's almost like when you fall in love, everything looks better. You
Yeah.
know, you
Yeah.
just
I love that analogy. That's exactly it. Yeah.
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 Um, I did want to ask you about your work with clients. Do you connect with their higher selves, or
I
does your
do.
higher self connect with their higher self?
Yeah. So I do have a rather unique talent in that I can connect to every single person's higher self if I choose to. I don't, because I think there are boundaries and one has to be polite, but I can do. And so when I'm working with someone, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, then I will connect to their higher selves to check if there's something either that that person is not quite understanding and needs a bit of translation help, or I might say your higher self wants you to talk to them about this specific thing. And that's all I'll get. I won't get any more detail because sometimes that's not for me to know. In one-to-one work, so I'm very solution orientated. So even if I do a higher self reading, I like to make it so that we have a solution that someone can go away and work towards. So I like to give very practical steps about, okay, you need to go away from this call and you need to do X, Y, and Z, and then this should happen. And then you need to think about this, this, and this. So that's how I like to work, right? I don't, even when I practiced Reiki and my other therapies, it was very solution based because that's what helps empower people. And I'm a firm believer that we're here to facilitate, not actually take the responsibility for healing someone. That's not my job. That's a big burden I don't want.
Yeah, and you don't wanna become overwhelmed, like,
Yeah.
you have it so that what you're receiving, you can organize and present to
Yeah.
someone in a way that's going to actually give them a practical
Yeah.
solution.
Yeah, exactly. And I think most people gain a great deal of satisfaction from doing it themselves, actually. And they feel good about themselves, right? They feel like, oh, I accomplished that. That's always a
Exactly,
great feeling. So, yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
yeah. Sonia, and I want to ask you your take on this ascension thing that we keep hearing about, Earth reset, whatever you want to call it. I have to confess, I've heard about it. I've watched some videos on it, but I'm still in a little bit in the dark as to what I'm supposed to do, if anything. Can you
Mm.
shed some light on what this is, and should we be preparing? And if so, how?
So I'll be honest, for a long time, I was unclear about what ascension might look like or feel like. And I heard a lot about gates opening at specific times. And I was kind of like, I don't really understand much of what that's going of that. But to me, what ascension actually represents is a choice of moving from a fear-based life into a love-based life. And by love, I don't mean physical love. I mean love for the life you're living, love for feeling living from a loving perspective so that life feels good to you the majority of time, and living in a way that's in alignment with your soul.
Hmm.
And by that, what I mean is you allow yourself to be guided by your intuition, by your higher self, by your soul. It's called soul-led living. And in that process, what happens is you'll notice habits change that no longer serve you. So a simple one might be you change your TV viewing. So you move away from reality TV and move towards maybe something more wholesome, maybe some nature programs, or you maybe turn off the TV altogether. Um, for me, part of my journey of ascension has been about going vegetarian.
Hmm.
So after a life of eating fish and meat, I'm now primarily vegetarian. But that for me was part of my ascension. It helps your vibration to rise. It helps you feel more loving to the world. By going vegetarian, I'm being loving to my own physicality, to my own body. See what I mean? So that's where I think ascension comes in. It's about actually being loving and living a life from a love-based perspective.
And is it just that more people are tuning into that for whatever reason? Maybe
Yeah.
all of us were decided pre-birth to be here at this time
Mhm.
to be
Mhm.
able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think so. I think if I think about, I've talked about this with other friends of mine who are therapists. When I learned my therapies in the late 90s, work was hard work. It felt like you were wading through mud. Nowadays, when I feel and I look at other therapists coming through and the rate at which they've grown, they're accomplishing things in 3 or 4 years that's taken someone like me 20 plus years. And I'm a fairly dedicated studier of energies, right? But it's because the energies, the universal energy, the planetary energy is lighter, it's easier. And the more people who choose to change their vibration, work on those fears, let them go, and live from a love based perspective, the lighter and lighter the energy will come. And at some point, we will reach a tipping point when there are more of us who are a love based perspective and few people who are fear-based, right? And what it will feel like for some people, and this was a really interesting realization for me, is that when you are living that love-based life, you will be enjoying your life so much that you won't even notice the stuff that fear-based people are into. It doesn't even touch your sides. So an example, again, a really simple thing I've noticed, I'm quite passionate about growing my own veg, and I'm in a couple of Facebook groups for vegetable growing. And I keep noticing there's little squabbles that I hear about subsequently. And it's like, it doesn't even touch my reality, because all I'm focused on is growing the best tomato or cucumber I can do, right? That's all I care about, because that gives me immense joy and passion. So all the fear-based thoughts and rows people have, they don't even touch. So I live a very different life to a lot of people, because I'm rather annoyingly happy kind of 99.9% of the time, right? And that's what's going to happen. The more love-based you become, the more you let go of those fears and those beliefs that don't serve you with the help of your higher self, the better your life will feel for you. And you'll realize there's a principle of love for me first, which is around the idea of whatever I do must feed me love. And when it feeds me love, it allows me to feed love outward, right? It's such a beautiful principle, because in that love for me first, it encapsulates the idea of I'm important, I'm safe, I'm worthy, I am loved, I belong, I'm wanted, I'm important. I mean, I could keep going on, it encapsulates all these wonderful things. And so if I feel those things about myself, then it's easy for me to pour that out to the rest of the world. And
Exactly.
that's your influence, right? That's how you're showing up in the world. And we all have influence. So I influence my family and my friends or my colleagues, and likewise they'll influence me, etc.
And it's contagious.
It's
So
contagious.
it's
Yeah.
it's more and more people are doing it, and then the planet gets even lighter and lighter and lighter.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
And the kind of side effects, if you like, or the effects of that is we begin to become more caring about the planet. We begin to care more about our neighbors. We begin to cherish community again. We come together in very positive ways, so that the change that we're trying to advocate for is positive for everybody, not just a select few. It means that we understand that wealth is something we can distribute really easily, but how we distribute it is in a really loving way. So it's a conversation I have with some friends quite regularly is about, if you won the lottery, what would you do with it? And sometimes the best thing is not to buy someone a house. Sometimes the best thing is to say to them, I'll help you with your deposit, but you pay your mortgage, because they need to feel ownership of that thing. Or sometimes it's better to buy, have you heard of microloans in places like Bangladesh and Africa? They're like mini loans that are given to women in villages. Sorry, I'm on a bit of a soapbox here. They're given to women in villages because they have discovered that if you empower women with these small loans, 85% of them will be repaid, but those women can lift those families out of poverty. If you gave the same money to men, it would not happen. The men would gamble it or spend it on something other
yeah.
than their family, right? So it's about that empowerment, right? And so with that wealth distribution, what happens is, because you're coming from love for me first, I am sorted out financially. I want to help other people do it financially. You do it in a way that allows them to feel important, safe, worthy, loved, wanted, and all those other things. And if we had even a tenth of the population doing that,
Yeah.
the world would be a really different place.
And hence the focus on women having this ability and
Yeah,
cultivating it,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that way it's going to have the largest effect.
yeah, exactly.
Let's face it.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I want to be clear, if you have any male listeners, I am not saying that men cannot be powerful change makers. They
absolutely.
most definitely can. And actually, sometimes the most powerful women are backed by the best men. Like, and I would say that I have a lovely husband and son, and they are
Mhm.
really supportive of everything I do. And I think that a woman who has a man in her corner can also go very far in life. So I would never want any man to think I'm doing them wrong either. I think,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, there are some brilliant men out there.
Absolutely. Well, Sunyana, I wanted to ask if you yourself and or Athalia could leave the listeners with a positive message. And I know you do cards, and I was wondering if we could maybe do a quick card
Yeah,
reading for that. That would
yeah.
be awesome.
I designed a set of cards called Connecting to the Truth of You, and
Awesome.
they're designed to enhance your relationship to your higher self, actually. That's what they're
Okay.
designed to do. So this is the back of them. Let me just show them to you, and then I'll do a little read. Can you see? There we go.
Yep. Connecting to
Yep.
the truth of you. Beautiful.
Yeah, and then so this one, for example, is I'm ready to learn. The truth is I'm ready to learn. And they have these little truths on them. And each truth is about provoking thought. Am I ready to learn? Yeah, I think I am actually. Okay,
Mm,
what do I want to learn about?
mhm,
I want to learn a bit more about my spiritual team. Okay, so how am I going to do that? It's that kind of, it wants to promote, but then you can also just use them as a trigger for your intuition and to understand as well.
mhm.
But for your lovely readers, let's see, listeners rather, let's see what we get. So we have the first card we've got is the truth is I'm not to blame. The truth is I'm not to blame. Now, this is a really lovely card because many of us, when we have been through stuff through our lives, we take on the responsibility for that thing. What we are responsible for is how we choose to react to the different things that happen in our lives, good or bad, right? We can choose, we have that power. You cannot control how other people behave towards you. That is their responsibility. So be really clear when you are reviewing things that you hold blame about, that you blame yourself about. Ask yourself, is that true? And is it necessary? Is it correct for me to blame myself for that situation? Or is that something I can let go of now? Because it wasn't my fault and I can choose how to make a different choice. Right? The second card I got is the hope that the truth is hope is my superpower.
Mm,
This is one of my favorite cards in the deck. Hope is the precursor to possibility, and possibility is the precursor to probability. So when you feel like, I just don't know how to get out of this situation, hope is something that lives within you, it resides in your soul, and you always have access to it. You can turn inward and go, okay, I just need to find some hope. And it's like the light at the end of the tunnel for you to follow. Because hope will spark inspiration, hope will spark a thought, an idea. And if you can follow that thought without too much of, oh, I don't know if this will work or not, just try and follow that thought. And that thought might be as simple as go into your garden or go to the park or
yeah.
go and have a drink of water. It could be a really simple action. But as soon as you start acting on it, it opens up possibilities for other things to happen. And that's why it's such a glorious card, because hope is like one of the best gifts we could have for ourselves. So that's the second card. And then the third card, the truth is I desire to allow myself to be loved. Truth is I desire to allow myself to be loved. So desire cards are often about aligning to the idea that I'm lovable, that I can do something,
Mhm,
right? And so it's about saying that I know that I want to feel loved. I want to love myself. I want to feel love from my higher self and my team. I might want to feel love from other people around me, physical humans around me, but I'm struggling to allow that in at the moment. So, what can I do to soften that resistance? And how can I allow myself to do that? So, a simple thing might be you go to bed and get the sleep you want and need, or you eat the meal that you know is going to make you feel good, not the fried chicken and chips or the candy or whatever, but maybe the delicious sweet potato with some great veggies and some really lovely chicken or fish or whatever. That is actually the first step in reducing that resistance because you've shown love to yourself, right? So look at what little steps can I take to allow myself to feel loved.
Exactly. And that card I think goes along with the hope card quite well because
Yeah,
what they say, it's always darkest before the dawn.
yeah,
And that is so true. I have
yeah,
found if you just have a nice meal and go to bed,
yeah.
when you wake up the next morning, you can have a completely different
Different.
perspective on whatever it
Absolutely.
was.
And part of that is because during the day when you're feeling so distressed, your brain has got in the way. You're not allowing yourself to feel, you're just feeling all the stress. And so instead, when you go to bed after that good meal, you allow everything to calm down and slow down. And so you wake up the next day and it feels good. And then the fourth card, and this is the final one they want me to say, the truth is my team want to help me. The truth is my team wants to help me. And this is really it kind of summarizes our conversation, really, which is, our higher selves are delighted. Before I came onto the call, I was connecting into your and my higher selves. And I was like, so what do you need to know? What do you want us to talk about? And they were like, just the fact you're having the conversation is amazing. Like, just remember that. That's amazing. And it's the sign. The truth is my team want to help me. It's just kind of an acknowledgement that they're just waiting for us to ask for that help and waiting to say, jump right into this life with me. Let's see what we can create together and co-create together. That's what they're waiting for.
That is
So yeah,
awesome. Thank you for that, for those
you're
messages. I
you're
think
very
those
welcome.
those messages are a great point to end on. I'd just like
Okay.
to ask you, where can people find out more about your services and where to get your cards and
Okay.
get in
Yeah.
touch with you?
So I am on all the usual social channels. You can find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook group um, called Energetics Every Day. I'm on TikTok as well.
Good
I'm
for
only
you.
new to TikTok. I have to say, I'm learning. My 19-year-old son laughs at me quite a lot when he sees me doing what I'm doing, but I'm quite enjoying it actually. And then you'll find me on Instagram as well as Energetics Every Day. I have a website called Energetics Every Day with Sunayana Clark. And on it is a pop-up that will allow you just to get the higher self connection process for free. Okay. There's
Awesome.
no charge. It's basically you get it in exchange for your email. I'm not one for spamming people, so you won't get hundreds of emails from me, I
Yeah.
promise.
Yeah.
And then I have an Etsy store that they can order merchandise from me, which they can access through my website. Or on Instagram, there's a link tree link that they can click on and they can go through that as well.
Okay. Awesome.
So
I will make sure that that information gets in the description
thank
box as
you.
well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunyana. It's been a
You're
lovely
welcome.
conversation. I
It
really
has been great.
appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye for now.